Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks. Thank you for being here. I'm Elena Dato. I'm a clinical psychologist. So I will move to a more clinical perspective now. I want to show you other brain pictures. I mean, I have just one, but it's really yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm particularly interested on the study of eating disorders and obesity. I'm finishing my PhD and I'm training to become a psychotherapist. So before starting, we have other questions for you, because I want also to know a bit about your knowledge on eating disorders, and so yeah, you can. Yeah. Also, in this case, you can choose more answers. Okay. Well, this was actually what was I expecting, because yeah, I think nowadays we hear a lot about eating disorders, so also with social media, and so I was expecting most of you to know what they are. Um, so yeah, this is a good beginning because then I can skip some parts for you. And then, yeah, I mean, now probably you're a bit biased because Aline already told you a bit about healthy diet, and now you all know that Mediterranean diet is healthy diet, but exactly. Mhm. Nice. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And this is also interesting for what we will see later, especially the last 2 points. So if it's always functional and always good for our mental health, or whether it can also become dysfunctional in some cases. So, but yeah, I see that most of you also mix healthy and unhealthy eating, which is also normal, and most of the time is functional. So, okay, thank you for answering. We can move. So today, as I was mentioning before, I will talk a bit about eating disorders, but I don't want to go deeply on the categories of eating disorders, but I would like to talk a bit more about eating behaviors in general, because we know that food is deeply connected to both our emotion and social lives. And most of the time, this connection is a source of joy and nourishment, but it can sometimes become rigid, isolating, and very distressing. And I'm sure you can all think about a moment in which you were feeling happy just because you were eating your favorite food. That's what we often call comfort food. And here I chose this picture because for me, my favorite and comfort food is pizza. And I really feel happy when I know that I will have pizza while I'm eating pizza. Or maybe you can also think a moment, you can think about moments in which you are happy just because you are eating with someone else. So you are eating with your partner or your friends, you are having a dinner with your family. And so the joy coming from food consumption is amplified by the connection that you are experiencing in that moment. But also, healthy eating is also recognized as a happy moment for some of you, maybe because you like the feeling of energy and balance coming from a healthy lifestyles. And all these situations are completely normal, and these are part of our daily lives. But as I was mentioning before, there are some cases in which these eating behaviors may become dysfunctional. And for example, if we think about comfort food, there are some situations and some cases in which food become the only strategy that the person has to deal with negative emotions. So in this case, food and eating is no longer about pleasure and nourishment and joy, but it can become a source of distress, both for the person and for those around them. And I would also like to provide you some clinical examples, some brief clinical example, to make it a bit clearer. So for example, here we can read this brief case. So After an argument with her partner, Anna finds herself heading straight for the kitchen. She's not hungry, but eating something sweet feels like the only way to calm down. By the time she stops, she feels worse than before. So here you can see that the eating behavior starts not because Anna is hungry, but because um, for her, this is a way to deal with this frustration coming from the argument with her partner. But actually, the result is that in the end, she feels even worse than before. And there are also some cases in which also social eating may become dysfunctional, especially when there is a real inability to resist food during social situations. So, for example, when you are seeing other people eating and you eat just because you see other people eating, or because you still have food in front of you and you can't resist the temptation of eating that food, even if you are full and you're not hungry anymore. And this is, for example, really typical in patients with obesity, and it can really represent a barrier towards weight loss. And also here, I have a brief case. So Luca is trying to lose weight, and usually it's very carefully. But when he's out with friends, he finds it hard to say no, even if he's already full or not enjoying the food. He laughs along, eats more than planned, and later feels disappointed with himself. So also here you can see that Luca is eating not because he's hungry, but because he sees other people eating, but then he feels worse than before. But what is interesting, and this is also related to the questions that I shared before, is that also healthy eating may become dysfunctional in some cases, especially when the person experiences an intense discomfort that arises when he or she is unable to follow a healthy diet. And this can become really isolating for the person, because maybe for the person might be really difficult to eat outside, or not having the control or what he or she is eating. So, for example, Chiara avoids going out with friends because she's afraid she won't find anything clean or healthy enough to eat. She feels anxious and guilty if she eats something outside her planned meals, even if it's just one bite of bread. So also here you can see how this behavior, which is usually functional and normal, can also become really distressing. And all of these cases needs clinical attention, because this may lead eventually to the development of an eating disorder. So most of you are familiar with eating disorders, but so in general, these are mental health issues characterized by dysfunctional eating habits. And I won't go deeply into the different categories of eating disorders, because actually there are many different eating disorders, and also new forms of eating disorders, such as orthorexia nervosa, which is this rigid attention to healthy food. But in general, we can recognize a restrictive type of eating disorder, which is characterized by a restriction in food consumption, because the person is really afraid of gaining weight. And this is, for example, anorexia nervosa. But then we also have binging, purging, or binging only types of eating disorder. So a binging purging type is, for example, bulimia nervosa, in which there are some binge episodes, which means that the person eats a high amount of food in a very short period of time, and then engage in compensatory behaviors such as excessive physical activity or vomiting. And then we have binging only types of eating disorders, such as binge eating disorder, in which we will see these binge eating episodes without compensatory behaviors. But this is just really a very simple overview. It's much more complex than this, but just to give you some examples. And I would also like to talk about obesity. Obesity is not recognized as an eating disorder. It's more a medical condition. And broadly, it is characterized by an excessive accumulation of body fat. But what I would like to highlight today is that obesity is a multifactorial condition. So we cannot identify one only factor leading to the development of obesity. And also what I would like to highlight is that obesity is not simply eating too much and not being able to stop eating. So of course we have a genetic component. So some individuals are simply more predisposed than others to gain more weight. Then we also have an environmental component. So let's think, for example, about those context in which there is an easy accessibility of high ultra-processed food, as we were saying before, or also when you are exposed to larger portion sizes. Then there is a behavioral component. So we talk about our eating habits, physical activity, and even our sleep pattern can play a role in this. As mentioned before, we also have an important psychological component. So there are some cases in which actually most of the time we also see some psychological issues such as anxiety, depression, and also eating disorders. And then there is a physiological component. So we might see some hormonal imbalances, or maybe also the role of some medication or the gut microbiota, as we were saying before. Obesity is more, it's not only about eating too much, as I was saying before, and even though it is not an eating disorder, it is often associated with it, and especially we will often see an interplay between obesity and binge eating disorder. Of course, not everyone with obesity has a binge eating disorder, and not everyone with a binge eating disorder is obese, but it's really common that these conditions come together. And there is a common psychological mechanism that we can identify between these two conditions, which is emotional eating. Basically, emotional eating is when we eat in response to emotional cues. Most of the time, negative emotions. I'm sure you're all familiar with this Disney cartoon. So most of the time, emotional eating starts in response to negative emotions such as sadness, fear, also disgust, and anger. But there are also some cases in which it can arise from positive emotions such as joy and happiness. But the important part is that when we eat in response to emotional cues, we eat not because we are hungry, so we actually feel that our stomach is rumbling and we need food, but just because it's a way for us to respond to these emotions. And also what is interesting is that usually when we engage in emotional eating, we will tend to eat more, we will tend to eat foods that are highly in sugar, fat, salt. Let's think, for example, about chips or cookies or ice cream. This is also really common in patients with obesity and binge eating disorder. But what I would also like to highlight is that most of the time, binge eating and emotional eating may lead to the development of a cycle, which is really difficult to disrupt. And I would like to tell you a bit more about this cycle that we often observe in patients with binge eating and or eating disorder. So usually this cycle starts with a difficult emotion, as we were saying before, most of the time a negative emotion. For example, I'm feeling sad. And because I don't have other strategies to deal with these emotions, what I will do is that I will eat to find a comfort against this emotion. But actually, even if at the beginning I might feel actually better, so I feel relieved, then this relief will be replaced by even more negative feelings, such as feelings of guilt and shame. And in order to find a relief, a temporary relief of these negative feelings, I will engage in very strict thoughts, such as I will never do it again, or starting tomorrow I will be completely healthy. But actually, this type of thoughts will have the opposite consequence. So they will result in a even stronger vulnerability towards emotional cues, which might result in another binge episode. And so the cycle starts again. And there is an element which makes this cycle even more difficult to break. That is that, especially in these individuals, there is a deficit for which, when their bodies speak, they can't hear it. And we talk about interoception, which is our ability to sense and interpret our bodily signals, such as hunger. But when interoception doesn't work, basically, we can confuse feelings like stress or sadness or boredom with hunger. So as I was saying before, when this communication between our brain and our stomach works, we will be able to tell the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. We will recognize when we are comfortably full and satisfied what we had. So we will stop eating even if we still have food in front of us. And we will also be able to understand the emotions that we are feeling. But when this communication doesn't work, and this is what we see, for example, in patients with obesity and binge eating disorder, but eating disorders in general, is that we won't be able to recognize the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. So we may mistake any discomfort for hunger. We will continue eating even when our body says, I'm full. And we will use food as a way to cope with these uncomfortable and negative emotions, as mentioned before. So I won't tell you too much about how to treat these eating disorders or obesity, because I think it's maybe this is not the right context. But I would highlight some strategies that we can use to build a healthier and better relationship with food. And in this case, I won't talk about diet or strict diet, but it's more of a general, healthy relationship with food. First of all, and this is related with what we have just said, we need to reconnect with our body. So we need to learn how to listen to our physical hunger and fullness cues. And a strategy to do this is, for example, to practice mindful eating. I don't know if you have ever heard about it. Probably some of you, yes. This is a practice that basically involves slowing down while eating, savoring food, and listening to our body. And actually, the self-awareness arising from mindful eating may be extremely powerful, because it make us be more. We can become more aware of what we are eating, why we are eating, and how much we are eating, and also to understand when we had enough to eat. And this is also used with patients, but I think it's a strategy that we can all practice in our daily lives. Then, as I was mentioning before, there is this strong connection with emotions as well. So also learning to manage strong emotions is a strategy that it can be helpful to build a healthier and better relationship with food. Especially when we see that we often use food as strategy to deal with these negative emotions, we should try to learn new strategies to deal with our emotions. And a way to do this is, for example, keeping a diary to track our emotion, thoughts, and eating patterns. This is also used with patients, but I also think that it might be interesting to do from time to time, especially when food become particularly distressing for us. And in this way, we may become aware of certain patterns that we engage in while we eat. For example, that when we feel stressed, we tend to eat more sugar or salty foods, or maybe that when we are bored, we tend to snack more. And then, of course, another important part is to seek support. So try to talk about our experiences, and especially when we feel that these behaviors become particularly distressing for us, seeking professional help. So we should refer to a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, or a dietitian to build a healthy relationship with food, both from a psychological point of view, but also from a nutritional point of view. And so I would like to conclude by sharing these QR codes that I think might be of interest. So you can take a picture or scan them now. The first one links to the National Eating Disorders Association. This is actually based in US, but even if you are not in the US, you can have a look at the website, because it provides some interesting information on eating disorders, their treatments, and interventions. And also the second QR code links to the National Institute of Mental Health. And also here you will find some interesting information also from a research perspective. So you can also look at the most recent findings on eating disorders, treatments, and support. And then, because we are in the Netherlands, I thought it might be also useful to provide you contextual also information. So the last link links to Novarum, which I find out to be, but maybe the Dutch people know it better. I don't know. It's a mental health service in the Netherlands that provide support for eating disorders. So I don't know if you want to, yeah, maybe it might be of interest for you if you or someone you know is struggling with eating disorder, or just because you are interested or want to know more, feel free to have a look. And so thank you for your attention. And yeah, I'm happy to take your questions if you have them, or maybe we will